This is the Gauntlet Podcast, episode number 1. Games we are looking forward to in 2015, aka games we kickstarted in 2014.
Or 2013.
Or 2012. I have one that is deep into 2012. My name is Jason.
My name is Steve.
My name is Dan.
All right, well, before we begin with the main topic, the games we're looking forward to, why don't we talk a little bit about what we played last week?
Yay. So my only outlet tends to be the Sunday games, but we had our unusual Christmas party pre-game, so I was able to play The Final Girl, finally. The Final Girl, indeed. Well, what'd you think about it? We played a lot, so I'll get your thoughts on it. Yeah. So I've played a lot of Fiasco, and The Final Girl seems to have the same sort of just enough rules to encourage a very quick-flowing, easy game. And I think so long as somebody is playing Fiasco and has seen any sort of Coen Brothers movie, they more or less know what's going on. And The Final Girl is probably even better for that because all you have to have seen is a horror movie. Basically.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I love The Final Girl because the characters are shallow and simple. The theme of the game is really, really sticky. The horror movie slasher flick theme is amazing. The characters are easy to get into. You don't have to commit to one character. Yeah. It's a great game. It's really awesome.
And I liked I went home and immediately bought it, basically. And just
you will never get it in the mail.
I have the PDF.
Just so you know.
Right. I have the PDF and a printer.
Brett Gillen, if you're listening to this, you still owe me a physical copy of The Final Girl.
Me too, but that's only like 2 days in the making, so it's cool.
Mine's about 2 years. So.
Hey, games we're looking
Welcome to the Goblin Podcast, where we just put people on blast randomly who have wronged us.
Not libelous, because truth is a defense against libel. So. No, but The Final Girl is amazing. It's so good. I'm glad you liked it because it's something that Dan and I probably played 100 times, right? Mm-hmm. And it's our go-to game in the Gauntlet when we have an excess number of people and we need an extra game to play.
Yeah.
The Final Girl is the one we go to because you can get it to the table in like 5 minutes. Everyone understands the theme. It's terrific.
And I don't know if you'd call it troop play, but the common pool of characters means if you're new going into the game, especially if you're unfamiliar with this sort of thing, you don't have to worry about developing a deep character. You just go with some cliche you've seen. And furthermore, your character's probably going to be dead in 10 minutes.
Well, and it's genre appropriate, right?
Yeah.
Like, in those movies, characters are shallow. They're not deep characterizations,
no.
Right? And I like the fact that one of the cool things that happens in The Final Girl because of that, the communal pool of characters that everyone can choose from and play in a given scene, is you end up with different interpretations of a character. And that's one of the best things about it. One of the things I remember from a game we played about a year ago or so, it was high school. There were a number of, classic jocks and slutty teenagers and that kind of thing, right?
Of course.
But there was also a foreign exchange student, and each of us took the opportunity to speak in a different foreign accent every time we grabbed the character. So over the course of the game, that foreign exchange student was a French foreign exchange student, or I was French. There was a German. I'm well known for my superb German accent, so I always go for German. Yeah, it's great, and that level of like inconsistent play and shallow characterization is genre appropriate, and it really makes The Final Girl sing. Really, really good game. Dan, do you have any games?
So I actually spent a lot of time this week near death. So the only game that I actually played in this week was we kicked off a new session of Monsterhearts.
Indeed, yes. 5 sessions of Monsterhearts.
5 sessions,
yeah, 5 sessions
so,
campaign.
This
new
was
campaign.
The first one, the start of it?
It was the start of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's really much to say about it, though, right? Because we didn't get much into the RP, really. Did you?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. I thought it went really well, and I enjoy the setup of that. That's another game that's another game where like Fiasco or something, where just doing the setup itself is fun.
Yeah.
So going through and figuring out who's in your homeroom and why you all kind of hate each other, but also kind of want to bang each other is pretty great. So.
And I've run that game several times over the course of the last couple of years. I've probably run about maybe 4 campaigns of Monsterhearts. Is campaign the right word? I don't know if I'm using that word. I always think
seasons.
Seasons, that's right. It's supposed to be like a TV show.
Right.
It was one of the first times where I ran it, and I felt very happy about the setup. I think the first couple of times I ran that game, I didn't spend enough time on the world building in the beginning. I think I could have done more those first couple of times, but this time I really, really wanted to emphasize that. And so I'm happy you enjoyed it, because I enjoyed it a lot too. And I remember leaving that session thinking, I think this was the right way to set this game up, right? And it's super important in Monsterhearts.
Did you leave the session with things sort of not I don't know if infighty is the right thing to say, but where the PCs are sort of aimed at each other? Or
Absolutely.
Is there
We did, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean we started the session like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things that our friend Russ we're running 2 tables currently. Monsterhearts.
Oh, that's right.
They're 2 different schools within the same town. Our school is the private Catholic school, and Russ's school, his table is the public school. One of the things I want to say is Russ and I were talking beforehand about like different things to do in order to set up the game. And one of the things I emphasized with him, which was also kind of as I was kind of reminding myself of the right practices and best practices for setting up that game, was when you're asking those questions about the NPCs in the beginning, just for the audience, you have to create a seating chart in the beginning of the game where you create NPCs and you ask the players questions about these NPCs you've made up. And the players can also ask each other questions about the NPCs. One of the things that I was very careful to do, and I discussed with Russ, was when you're asking those questions, find a way to pivot and connect in another PC. So if you're asking about Amy, the cheerleader, and you ask character X about their relationship with Amy, use their answer to then build on that and kind of swing into another PC and ask them a question about Amy related to it, so that you have those automatic, you're connecting them via that NPC, right?
The Apocalypse World PC, NPC, PC
Indeed,
triangles.
Exactly. Thank you. That's good. And you're right. That's exactly what it is. And like you said, it goes back to that PvP thing. So that's what Dan means. Like we started PvP, which was good.
That sounds like a perfect start based on the 2 games I've played, at least.
I'm really happy with it. Now it may go off the rails completely because next week we're not sure if we're going to have the right number of people. But we'll find out. And that was it for you, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, on Thursday, I played the Pathfinder Adventure card game. I don't have a lot to say about it. If anyone listened to episode 0, I said kind of what I wanted to say then. I will add one quick addendum to my statement last week about the Pathfinder Adventure card game. Some people said I sounded like I didn't like the game. That is not true. I do, in fact, like the game. It's just not a good game. I think those 2 things can both be true. A game can be quite unimpressive, but also fun. We still have fun with it, and the game is enjoyable and I like it, but mechanically it's a bit whack. That's all I'm saying.
That sounds fair.
All right. And that's all I want to say about it. We had a great time.
With a terrible game.
It was it was tremendous fun. And then we have Krampusnacht. So Krampusnacht was the name of our Christmas party this year. We had about, I think all told, about 15 or 16 people, maybe. Is that right?
If we're including the pre-party game.
Right, yeah. Over the course of the whole afternoon and evening, there were about 16 people who showed up. Yeah. We played multiple games. So I guess we can talk about some of those. One of the games that we played was, that was actually the Final Girl.
Right.
Yeah, that was during Krampusnacht. Yeah. You've already talked about that.
One, 2, skip a few.
Indeed, yeah. Well, the Final Girl was played during Krampusnacht. We also played Hell for Leather. That is to say, the Gauntlet played Hell for Leather. Neither Dan, Steve, nor myself played Hell for Leather. I really want to, though. I have not played it yet. I'm super jealous. I heard it was a great time, though. So if you're looking for an awesome game, go pick up Hell for Leather. I'm sure it's great.
Well, I'm happy that none of you played it, so that I have an excuse to put it on the calendar again.
Put it on the calendar. I think it's going to be a good one. I know it uses tarot cards.
Yeah. And I have a crappy deck.
Yeah, and I know some things about it. It uses tarot cards. It involves Satan, which I love. And then
whom you love.
Whom I love. Thank you, Steve. It also is, I gather, similar to the Final Girl in the sense that there's character elimination. Is that true?
I believe so.
Did I mishear all of that when they were talking about it?
So I'm thinking about a completely different game that uses like the dice that you stack up in a tower.
That's different. That's Hell. That's HELL 4 FOR leather. Not Hell number 4 leather. We played.
Okay, so that's not confusing at all.
To clarify, we played Hell number 4 leather,
right.
Not Hell FOR leather, which are 2 different games.
They, I believe, came out of the same game design contest. I think somebody said it was Game Chef, but the theme was like 2 games, 1 name.
Was it like Hell and leather were the ingredients?
No, it was 2 games that share the same name. Yeah. That was the contest, I believe, and so.
The confusion is basically intentional.
So they baked the confusion in.
Yes, they did. Okay. Yeah. But I've never played either. I know the one involves stacking little tiny dice.
Right, that's the one I thought you had played.
No. We played the tarot card one. We played the tarot card one.
Okay, great. I've never even heard of that one. So
it's Joe Prince, the guy that did Contenders, I think?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I gather it was really good. The other thing we played during Krampusnacht was First Impressions. Now, First Impressions is a game that came from this collection of games called 24 Game Poems, who I can't remember the author.
Mark Major.
Mark Major. 24 Game Poems. A lot of these games are very short-form role-playing games, or they are role-playing games that are played with either very tiny or very large groups of people. We played one that requires a very large group of people, and we had a large group. Do you want to talk about what happened?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I think we had 10 people plus you as like timekeeper /
Yeah, I decided to take kind of a GM sort of role.
Yeah.
So in the game, it's a speed dating game, but the characters you play are potential members of an adventuring party who are doing a speed dating type interview process with each other, whereby they will then decide to come to a collective decision about who will be in the adventuring party to go on this great quest. What did you think about the actual gameplay?
Oh, it was a ton of fun. It was a good excuse to basically for 2 minutes at a time make up wild, ridiculous, fantasy-based lies.
Right, yeah.
And it's sort of like we were saying with Final Girl, you have a nice, easy niche in which to fit yourself.
Dungeon speed dating, what else do you need to know?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And supports huge groups.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it scales really well.
Maybe with
It's
some
awesome.
finagling.
Yeah, it scales. I think as long as you have about six to 8 people to start with, you're in good shape on that one. So, and then finally on Sunday we played Puppetland. I loved Puppetland.
Yeah, me too.
Puppetland?
So I'd had like Puppetland on the brain since I don't know, probably late '90s. Because I had the original Hogshead version, but I've never until a few years ago I've never had a regular group. So I've been looking forward to that one for a while. It's a great like just twisted enough fairy tale type setting.
Right. Yeah.
And so the gameplay is something I'd never quite experienced before. So as a player, you're not really allowed to say, oh, well, then I go over there and I take that thing from him. Everything has to be in character dialogue, even the things that you're doing.
You can never break in character dialogue.
Right. Yeah. So you would say, well, I'm going to come over there and steal that from you. That's what it has to be in character.
Right, yeah.
And so it's a weird mindset to get into, but I thought we actually
It went
managed
great,
pretty well.
yeah. I mean, that restriction whereby you cannot ever speak in the third person about what your character is doing, and the GM can't either. Everything is like a sing-songy storybook sort of narration, and what it does is the outcome is exactly what's on the box, right? That's the thing I like to say, is the outcome as depicted on the box, and it is. It creates this situation where everyone is speaking like a storybook character. The Dungeon Master, or not the Dungeon Master, the GM is speaking like a story game character, or a story game narrator, I should say. And it just flows really, really well. Yeah. It was terrific. And that was just a really, really, really fun game. I loved it.
Yeah, me too.
Good stuff.
Looking forward to, right. That'll come later.
Ah, indeed. Well, so our main topic is games we are looking forward to in 2015. The top 5 games, I think, is what we've settled on that we're looking forward to in 2015. Dan, would you like to get started?
Sure. So my top game, or I guess these are in no particular order, honestly.
I'm sorry. Yeah, top 5 is the wrong. Just 5 games
right.
we're looking forward to.
The 5 games out of many that happen to be the ones that we put on our lists. But my first one is Goblin Quest, which we talked about a little bit in episode 0. So I'll just plug our previous podcast, and you can go listen to that for more on Goblin Quest. But
go to our website to find the link.
Right, yes. The website is, what was the URL again?
I've forgotten. We'll cover it at the end.
Right. Listen to episode 3 for the URL.
I'll remind you to bring it back up at the end.
Thank you. Please do. Yes.
Okay, so Goblin Quest. I think the main thing that I'm interested in on Goblin Quest is this was a Kickstarter game, and it hit like 1 million stretch goals. It was a really well done Kickstarter where the stretch goals were actually things being added to the book, not just like, hey, here's more things you can buy, which that's not a good Kickstarter. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Would you like to mention a Kickstarter that has gone that route?
No, I'll leave that as an exercise for the listeners to figure out which Kickstarter I'm talking about.
There's a bit of a clue in Goblin Quest, though.
Well, now you're just making it too easy. But every stretch goal was basically a new hack for the game, and the engine itself is really adaptable. You wouldn't think necessarily that just the idea of, you play incredibly fragile characters and they die one after the other and another one just steps up to take their place. That is surprisingly adaptable. So I think there's hacks to turn it into a Cthulhu-based investigators going insane and wandering off somewhere.
Nice.
And we also have master swordsmen who are avenging the deaths of a friend of theirs, and then all of your previous characters' deaths as they die have to be avenged by your next characters.
What's the name of that one?
That is Inigo Montoya Jr. And it even has the part where you give the long Inigo Montoya speech, which is great.
It was good. We playtested that. It was a lot of fun.
We did, yes. Yeah. Other things, Regency Ladies sounds amazing. You have 5 daughters, and you are trying to marry them to a man of means. And so if they marry...
Like you do with your daughters.
Right, yeah. So if they marry poor people, I think that basically counts as them dying, and you just write them off and get your next daughter in. So.
Wow. Yeah. I have to imagine it's a very sensitive and nuanced treatment of feminism, of women.
Well, it sounds like it.
And
Well, it's Jane Austen, the role-playing game. I mean...
So I'm mostly
I'm
ignorant.
sure it's going to be great.
I'm mostly ignorant on Goblin Quest. Is it its own system or a hack of it or something?
So it's its own system, but I mean, there's not much to the system itself, which is why it's so hackable. Like, the mechanics are very easy. When we did the playtest, like, I explained it in probably 5 minutes to a table full of like 7 people, and then we ended up splitting the table and playing 2 separate games. And so, you know, it's
with somebody
easy enough.
that-
Yeah, so
okay,
it's easy enough to explain in like 5 minutes, and then someone can go run a game of it.
And quite successfully. It was good.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
So that's my first one. Who's next?
So this is largely unordered, but if there is an order, I think this probably is my first. I'm looking forward very much to Primetime Adventures, which is a little weird because the second edition is out. I'm not sure how different the third is going to be, but not probably. My best gaming experience ever is Primetime Adventures.
Wow.
And I only got to play it one other time, and that wasn't, number one, but it's still pretty cool. It, once again, calling back to the thing that Final Girl does well, this sort of calls on, maybe less calls on tropes than it does on just our inherent knowledge of how television drama works based on, watching TV.
Right.
Because, unless you're some weirdo that doesn't do that. And the mechanics reinforce that, and they pound really hard on, is this dramatic? Is this interesting? Instead of, does it make sense for your character to be able to do, what's your strength? I don't get it. No, it works on the drama, and the fan mail mechanic is just gorgeous and spectacular.
Should we explain what fan
Yeah, what
mail
is... Well,
Yeah.
let's back up a second, and can you just explain what the premise
Oh, yeah.
of Primetime
So Primetime
Adventures
Adventures, you basically make a TV show. You're basically trying to come up with, the starting premise for a TV show and the characters that would fit within it. And they function, as I was saying, on the rules of drama instead of the rules of simulation or something like that.
And so this is like, is this reality TV, or is it...
I've seen actual plays of that done. Like, hey, we're going to do a documentary about wolves. And
That sounds awfully exciting.
so it functions on pretty much whatever you'd like to go after TV-wise, as long as it would fit into a TV show. And, I don't know, maybe not like a cooking show or something. But I think just about anything else that utilizes the rules of drama works really well for Primetime Adventures.
I one time watched a cooking show called Cooking with Carol. It was a local cable station.
I like it already.
Cable access TV show called Cooking with Carol in Dallas. I'm not sure if it's still on. Carol might be not with us anymore. I'm not sure. But it was great magnetic television. It was so good because during the show, as you're watching it, you could see Carol playing out her family drama, like her drama with her kids and her husband. You could see her wrestling with it. It came out in the show, and you wanted to watch the next episode to see if her life was going to completely fall apart. It was kind of amazing.
So is it like, I call this recipe, shut up and eat your goddamn green beans?
It was pretty close to that. Yeah, like she would just like make little asides or little commentary about like, oh, my husband doesn't like this, but we're not going to talk about that. It was that sort of thing. Right?
Wow.
It was pretty effing amazing. I loved it.
I was wrong. Cooking shows work too.
I could totally see it.
But it's a great game. It functions beautifully, second edition. Third edition, I think I expected them to have tightened it up even a bit more. So very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about Primetime Adventures. I'd like to just say real fast, or a question for you. I have played dozens and dozens, Dan has as well, dozens and dozens of indie and story role-playing games. Have never played Primetime Adventures. Have I failed? Have I totally failed as a story gamer by not playing Primetime Adventures?
You should view this as an opportunity for self-improvement.
Noted.
Oh, sorry. I do want to mention fan mail. I don't know if it's the first game that came out with a fan mail equivalent
define fan mail, yeah.
Yeah. So in Primetime Adventures, don't quote me on this, it's been a couple years, but fan mail is basically there's a little pool at the start of the game out in the center of the table, and in order for, it's basically the potential points that you can use to increase your in-game results, basically, as a player. And in order for them to come into play, what has to happen is somebody at the table, can't remember if the GM can participate as well, but at least players, whenever any other player does something cool that you like, you grab one of those little points from the center, give it to him. It's your unofficial fan mail from, you're getting a fan letter because your character's awesome. And then you can take that point, now it's now in the game, and now you can use it. And you do the same thing through the rest of the game. And so what it does is it gives you a mechanical incentive to do awesome things that the other people love. And it does it in a very simple way, very effective way. Love it.
So that's why the mechanic is called fan mail.
Exactly.
That actually makes sense. I had never thought about it before, but it makes sense that it would come from a TV show based game, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, whoa. You're blowing my mind right now. You're like totally blowing my mind. I never thought about it that way either, but that's pretty cool. Well, the first game on my list, it's my turn, right? The first game on my list is Worldwide Wrestling by Nathan Paoletta. The premise of Worldwide Wrestling is you, the GM, or the MC, I guess, in Worldwide Wrestling, and the players are putting together a wrestling promotion. A wrestling promotion is like a card of events of wrestling matches, all leading up to the eventual championship match. All the players play over a series of like rounds. You actually you have the actual wrestling matches. You have all the smack talk that happens in between the matches. You have a little system whereby you coordinate like who's going to be the heel and who's going to be the face. That's the bad guy and the good guy. Who's going to be rivals with whom. One of the things that it does, I gather, I've looked at the beta rules. One of the things I gather is that you don't just play the wrestling character, say for example the Undertaker or Hulk Hogan. You also play the real life actor or performer of that wrestler, and so you're role playing.
I'm sorry, wrestling's not real?
No, wrestling is not. Wrestling is gloriously fake.
Oh,
actually,
you're blowing. What's the term for the wrestling? Like
K-fob.
K-fob.
Yeah,
you're blowing it.
yeah, K-fob. So Worldwide Wrestling, what's really attracting to, I'm attracted to it for several reasons. One of the reasons is it appears to tell the story. You're telling like two different stories in parallel. Essentially, you're telling the stories of the wrestlers and the sort of the not the K-fob, it's the K-fob, right?
Yeah.
You're telling the
kayfabe or whatever.
Kayfabe or yeah, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I may be saying
I've heard
it wrong.
kayfabe, which just sounds.
If you're a fan of wrestling and I'm doing this wrong, do write in. And so you're telling two different stories: the story of the wrestler, the sort of like fictional story of that wrestling character, as well as the wrestler's personal real life drama, and that's pretty cool. It's by Nathan Paoletta, who has done a lot of games that I really quite enjoy. It is a game that is considered PBTA, which means Powered by the Apocalypse, which itself means it is a hack of Vincent Baker's Apocalypse World engine, which is a terrific, terrific system. And so that's another great reason to be excited about it. I'm also excited about it because when I was a kid, I loved wrestling. I was a huge, huge wrestling fan. I don't know if that's informing my anticipation for this game or not. Or I'm sure it is. I mean, it's definitely informing it to some degree. But I loved wrestling. I haven't watched wrestling in years, but I was thinking back on that time as a kid, and I was trying to determine, like, did I really enjoy the wrestling, or was that just me being a little gay boy loving the idea of sweaty wrestlers like tossing each other about around? Not sure.
I'm just gonna say I don't think there's anything gay about wrestling. I was pretty big into wrestling. So
whoa, this feels like secret confessions, like true life confessions. You've never mentioned you were a wrestling fan.
Well, like any 12-year-old boy is a fan of wrestling.
Not this
right?
one.
Okay,
Sorry.
well, any real 12-year-old boy is a fan of wrestling. Like that's just a phase of your development that you go through. It's like you find wrestling and then you have these weird wrestling based feelings and then
Well, I'm glad you came out of the closet as a wrestling fan, Dan. I'm proud of you.
I will say that my love of wrestling died the first time I went to see a live wrestling event.
Oh, really?
Ooh,
I loved live wrestling events.
No.
Oh, man.
I was like, why aren't they actually hitting each other? This is kind of dumb.
Oh, no, I love
it. That was basically the end.
Well, so I've thought back on it, and I think what I love about wrestling still, even though I don't really watch it anymore, is it's for the same reason I love drag queens. I love drag queens, too. Drag queens are like this really, really exaggerated version of femininity, and wrestling like really like camp, over the top, exaggerated version of femininity. And wrestling is the same thing for masculinity, right? It's super campy, and I love camp.
Can't stop yelling at each other and threatening to kill each other.
And just in general, I love camp things. I love things that are objectively stupid and awful. And so I don't know. I'm really super excited about Worldwide Wrestling by Nathan Paoletta.
Well, if we're talking about things that are stupid and awesome, I think that's the perfect lead into Explosions the RPG.
Is that the next one on your list, Dan?
It is. This is a game that I don't know if this will ever come out or if this is just some like weird thing that Grant Howitt thought up in some sort of fever dream and like put on the internet as a weird joke or something, but he ran a playtest for it a while ago. The premise is that each player plays a 80s movie explosion. So your character is an explosion. There's a narrator who's trying to tell like an 80s action story movie plot, and everyone is trying to make things explode.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure what the mechanics are here, but if you successfully make things explode, then you get to take control of the story and you become the new narrator. And then everyone else is trying to make things explode while you're telling the story.
So is Grant Howitt kickstarting Explosions the RPG?
Not yet, no.
If he does kickstart Explosions the RPG, I hope he doesn't include tons of stretch goals that are just things for you to buy. That would be really bad.
That would be
Very
just
bad.
a terrible way to run a Kickstarter.
I agree
But
completely.
luckily, his Kickstarter seemed to have a great history, like Goblin Quest, where there's
Indeed.
all things that are added in
Indeed.
and not things that you're expected to buy.
Indeed.
I have to say that sounds a lot of fun.
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
think so too. Yeah,
So-
yeah.
That was all I had on that. I don't know if that's going to ever be a game, but I really hope it is one day because I'd really love to play an explosion. So,
Awesome.
So my next game is Urban Shadows, which
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little surprised I'm looking forward to, since it's very similar thematically to the Dresden Files. It's very much a modern urban fantasy with wizards and vampires and dragons and shit like that.
Are you not into the Dresden Files?
No, I like it a lot, but I played like 2 years plus of the Dresden Files RPG, and I am Dresdened the fuck out.
You sure you're not faded out?
No, I am Dresdened the fuck out.
All right.
Yeah, still like Fate. I'll play Fate. So Urban Shadows is written by Andrew Medeiros, I believe, so I haven't played Urban Shadows, but I've played a Star Wars hack he did of Apocalypse World. And Urban Shadows is another PBTA game, another Apocalypse World hack.
Yes.
And Star Wars World, I've run it twice. It's gone beautifully both times. I love it. There's not a ton of alteration of moves. It's mostly taking moves from, an Apocalypse World playbook or something like that and incorporating it, reinterpreting it in a Star Wars-y way. But it works very beautifully. He, I think, deals with the problem of Jedis being objectively better than everybody else at everything in a pretty good way.
Yeah.
And Apocalypse World helps because it's, it makes your characters awesome, pretty much.
Right.
On the basis of that, and on reading through the Song of Ice and Fire hack, where it's basically Apocalypse World and incorporates the strings mechanics from Monsterhearts.
Okay.
So you've got all this manipulation and political. I'm looking for a word that I'm unable to find. Political stuff.
leverage?
Machinations.
Sure, thank you. There we go. Oh, you guys know words.
Is it machinations or machinations?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know.
Leverage, I think.
Leverage is good.
Let's have a moment of
Well,
silence
actually,
while we
those are
look
the
it
same
up.
things. Well, one is like your evil plans, and the other is leverage.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
That is true. But
I think the game could probably handle either. But I'm very much looking to Urban Shadows, especially in that it adds a couple of cool things to the Apocalypse World repertoire. So it's got sort of an alternate experience track. Like Apocalypse World has your normal, you do such and such, you get XP. This one has a corruption mechanic, and it's got an associated corruption experience track. And each playbook has different things that earn you experience on that. So like, I was just flipping through a couple of them today. Like the Mortal, I don't want to go too Bella, but I think if you sleep with somebody else, basically, or if you have an intimate moment with somebody else,
right,
you can gain a little bit of corruption. Because thematically, that's, something that can lead you, somebody that can lead
vampire
you astray,
taint.
Let's not go too graphic. And so as you go along the corruption track, you can also take these corruption moves that you can only get this way. And they are the sort of darker side of your archetype. And it works beautifully thematic, or at least looks like it has. I haven't played it. But they allow you to, like, if you're the Mortal, you sort of, oh crap, I don't remember specifics. I apologize. They allow you to do, playbook appropriate things that are terrible for you and the people around you. And it looks like it's
That's great. I loved it. A very evocative description and example. It was really good.
I feel like I could just sit down and play already.
No. Seriously, I agree. Urban Shadows looks awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things that looks really cool in Urban Shadows, and I don't know how much you know. I don't know how much you've read the rulebook. I haven't read it much, but I've only listened to some other fine podcasts who are talking about it. And there's like factions.
Yeah.
That
was
looks
the
really
second
cool.
thing.
Sorry.
No.
Done. I'm sorry.
You almost certainly know more about it than I do. I haven't read it since the pre-Kickstarter version.
I don't know much about it. I just know that it has factions, and I think there are faction moves as well.
Yeah, and there's like you have trust ratings or whatever with some of the factions that go up or down depending on how you interact with them.
Yeah, it looks really cool to me, and it's also an an implementation of the sort of Vampire the Masquerade type theme and setting. Is that I hope I'm not getting that wrong.
But instead of you having to buy a 400-page city book or whatever, it gives you the tools, it looks like, to build up the machinations without having to have them front-loaded.
Indeed. Cool. Awesome.
Sounds like there's a lot going on there.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Can you play it as an explosion?
I think that's one of the stretch goal playbooks. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Dan's real simple. Professional wrestling and explosion. Cool. Well, the next one on my list is The Clay That Woke. Now, we weren't numbering our selections, but if I had to number them, I'd probably put The Clay That Woke at the top. The premise of the game is you are a minotaur within a community of minotaurs that, I hope I'm getting this right, these minotaurs exist alongside human society, and they have been used by human society as workers, servants, gladiators, that sort of thing. Really, really fascinating sort of twist on this sort of standard fantasy kind of setting, I guess. So I'm very, very excited about the premise of the game. I actually don't know how it works mechanically, and that's really unusual for me because I don't normally back things on Kickstarter if I don't understand at least the basics of their mechanics. And I also like to normally, read a little bit about a game and look at the betas before I make decisions about backing things or getting, invested in things. But I am still excited about this game, knowing nothing about the mechanics. It's by Paul, I'm going to say this wrong. Sieg.
I've heard Sega. I don't know.
Sega.
Paul, Czege.
Indeed. I was going to do it in Navy numbers. Charlie, Zeta, Echo, Golf, Echo. No, I don't know how you say his name, but he did My Life with Master, famously. That's his very important game that he did, and it's a very important game in terms of story games. I love My Life with Master. My favorite role-playing game experience, like yours was Primetime Adventures, mine was our 2 sessions of My Life with Master.
Oh, that's cool.
Just devastatingly wonderful. I'll never forget it. I loved every moment of it, actually. And so I'm not going to get into My Life with Master, but just off the basis of the fact that he designed The Clay That Woke, that he designed My Life with Master, I'm excited about The Clay That Woke. There's also, the art is terrific. Like, I've seen a lot of the art. We have the PDF already. I've already thumbed through it and looked at the art. Just these beautiful ink drawings.
Do you know who does the art?
I don't actually know. Now, I wish I had had that prepared in advance. I don't know who did the art, but it's exquisite and so evocative. And I don't normally get pumped about production value stuff like that. That's not normally a thing that excites me in games, like the production value. But this book it's gorgeous. Like, it's just, it gets me pumped up, and I'm really, really, really excited about it.
So what does the title refer to?
I don't know. I have not read it.
Alrighty.
This game
I think the Minotaurs were made out of clay or something.
And then they woke?
Something like that.
I believe we're on the same page.
I wouldn't quote me on that.
Probably not. I actually don't know what it refers to. I have not read much about it. It was a really kind of a blind back in a lot of ways. I just based off of Paul Sieg's reputation. He's done a couple of other games I've enjoyed and appreciated. And also just this very, very beautiful package. It just looks really exciting. So I know it has like a token economy.
Right.
And you have to have these special tokens to play with. And I'm not normally into games that have special little physical bits you have to use to play. So we'll see how that goes. But that's my only sort of reservation, I guess, in the back of my mind. But
you genuinely need them?
I think you do. Oh. Yeah.
And they're like $100 or something.
Yeah, you got to have these special tokens. And Dan and I actually conferred when we were thinking about kickstarting it. I was like, well, I'll go ahead and get the one with the tokens so that at least one of us has the tokens, right? So, yeah. I don't think they're that much, Dan, but they
are significantly more than the book.
So
if you go to his webpage, you can buy a physical book, but that doesn't really do you much good without the tokens that are like twice the cost.
Yeah. Well, and the tokens, the thing that I'm calling you out, Paul Sieg. That's the theme of this show, calling out RPG designers. You've got to put the stickers on yourself on these tokens. So you just
my God, you paid $200 for those tokens.
Well, it wasn't quite $200. It wasn't
$300, and you can't even stick the stickers on.
Yeah, you got to put the stickers on the tokens, which is and there's like 100.
I would expect more for $400. That's all I'm saying.
Paul Sieg, just note that. And if you have a problem with that, you should probably write us
to the email address that you can find on our webpage.
I will announce later.
Remind me to remind you at the end of the podcast.
I will indeed.
Yeah.
So that was mine.
All right. So my next game is The Warren, which this is another powered by the Apocalypse game. I'm sensing a trend.
There's a trend.
Here. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that's basically just because half the new games that come out are now powered by the Apocalypse. Not that that's necessarily even a bad thing.
It's good, though.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like, I give it up for Powered by the Apocalypse. Like, I want it in me. Like, I love it. Like, I want it
me
inside of
too.
me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you.
Meaning I want to internalize it in my heart.
Yes.
That is not what I meant. That's why I need a physical copy.
Oh, God. Sorry.
So, The Warren, it is a game where you are playing bunnies. I think the working title, we did a playtest of it earlier when it was called Lappins and Lairs, yeah. Which I really love the name, Lappins and Lairs.
I wish they
honestly.
hadn't changed it. I know. Lappins and Lairs is so much better.
Yeah. But
Guy who designed The Warren, we're calling you out.
that's right. And maybe Jason Morningstar, he may have had something to do
Might
with
have been
that.
his idea.
Yeah, he was
Dirty,
like, Lappins
dirty.
and Lairs, not marketable.
Dirty Jason Morningstar.
Exactly. So, anyway, The Warren, previously Lappins and Lairs, it's been picked up by Bully Pulpit, which is Jason Morningstar's company, and they're going to be the ones publishing it. So I think it's going through some final layers of playtesting and all of that. Yes. Anyway, you're playing a bunch of bunnies, and sort of the central mechanic, at least I felt like when we played it, was that something's happening that's going to screw up the environment that you live in. And so it has a mechanic like fronts, but the fronts are all sort of human driven.
Right,
so
yeah.
it's like a road's going to be built through the little happy pasture where your bunnies live.
Right.
And so as it goes on, things become more and more dire. And so first you just kind of see some people walking around, and then some strange machines come and some strange metal animals come and rip up the earth and start destroying your burrow. And then they start pouring asphalt and fumes get everywhere. And like, it just gets more and more bleak for your poor little bunnies until I feel like it kind of urges you to leave the burrow. I don't know if that was just something that happened in our game.
Might have just been our session. I'm not 100% sure on that.
But it feels like it's pushing large environmental things that you're going to have a hard time dealing with as bunnies.
Well, I'd like to add, the game is essentially Watership Down, right? It's
Yes.
it's bunnies and burrows.
It is.
Which is where the joke of Lappins and Lairs comes from, right? Which is why that was a better name.
Yes.
Designer of The Warren, who I don't
And
know.
also because who doesn't love the word Lappins? Come on.
It's great. I know, it's so good. I'm lapping it up.
Oh my
Oh
god.
my God.
I quit.
Welcome to the Gauntlet Puncast.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. No, so it's based off Watership Down, which means it means something. The rabbits, it's not just the external environmental factors. The rabbits are not angelic, virtuous creatures necessarily either.
Yeah.
There's lots of like rabbit, power struggles and treachery and things like that go on as well. So
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's not really, the environmental things, you're not necessarily equipped to deal with them.
I kind of got the feeling from what I saw of it, it seems like most of them are things that rabbits would have a hard time dealing with.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I think there are some of the rabbits. So one of the mechanical things that I think held over from the playtest version, I'm not sure, is like all of the rabbits have basic moves that any rabbit can do, and then each individual rabbit has a special move that only they can do. They're the only rabbit who can do that thing. And I'm pretty sure one of the things like that causes some of the rabbits to be able to cope with certain things better than other rabbits. And so I don't remember what the removes were, but there might have been moves that allowed certain rabbits to say fight or whatever,
But I mean, at the end of the day, you're still rabbits.
Exactly.
And you're not going to be able to stop a bunch of people coming through and like paving your meadow to build a parking lot or
You're
something.
not hopping into a tractor and
right, exactly.
driving it
Like
off.
you're not gonna stick it to the man and like make the humans all run away so you can live happily ever after in your meadow.
It's interesting.
Lappins and Lairs, or the Warren, sorry, it does this thing that I wanted you to talk about, Dan. I'd like for you to talk about it if you get a chance to, because you've mentioned this to me before as something you like about the game, and I'd like to hear you say it for the cast, which is controlling when you die, which is a thing that some role-playing games allow you to do. You don't just arbitrarily die because your hit points are zero, or you don't just die because your hit points are zero. You can choose your narrative death. Do you have anything to say about that?
So I don't actually remember exactly how that worked. I know that there is just an option, like every rabbit has a move that's retire this rabbit.
Right.
And so that's something that I actually did in our playtests.
Oh, that's a move, not an advance?
It's a move, yeah.
Ooh.
So basically at any time, you can just be like,
I'm retiring.
Fuck it,
this
I'm
rabbit.
out. Like
Wow.
this rabbit's gone.
And it takes like literally like 1 minute to make a new rabbit. So
Right.
you can
Okay.
just like you basically just take another rabbit from your clutch or your warren or whatever, and they were previously an NPC and now they can be a PC, right? That's kind of how that goes. But what I was getting at was, as I recall, and I may be misremembering this, I apologize to the developers of the warren if I'm getting this wrong. But as I recall, once you had acquired enough, there's a condition called like exhaustion or fear or something like that. There's some kind of like penalty condition that can be put on your rabbit. I'm not remembering what it is right now. Whereby if you receive that, enough of it, your rabbit basically becomes kind of limped or
Yeah,
limped in a
yeah,
big way, right?
right.
And so you may then decide, you might stick in, you might stick around to finish your story arc, but at some point you can throw in the towel for your rabbit and send them off in a way that is fictionally satisfying, right?
Right. There's not really rabbit healers or anything, right? So
Right.
you are rabbits
Yeah.
and your life is brutal and short. So when it gets to the point where you're no longer very functional, then you're kind of encouraged to have a send off for your character.
And it was quite poignant when it happened to
in.
your rabbit.
Yeah,
I believe.
I thought so.
I
Yeah.
enjoyed it a lot. The
Great.
Warren, awesome.
My next game is me cheating on my first podcast, and I'm going to mention two. They occupy sort of the same headspace for me, despite it looks fairly different thematically, or in a number of ways. The first is No Country for Old Kobolds, carrying on with the theme. This is another Powered by the Apocalypse game I kickstarted recently. No Country for Old Kobolds is basically about you. I think it sounds fairly similar to Goblin Quest, actually.
Yeah, I got that idea too.
Yeah. But you're basically playing extremely short-lived. I think I read the average lifespan for a kobold here is like 2 years. So they mature very quickly, and then they go off to fight the terrible humans and the terrible orcs and the terrible elves, all these neighboring societies that are encroaching upon their territory or just blatantly invading it and stabbing all of you. And then they die and get replaced. It's another, this one's dead, move another one into the same slot type of thing.
So 2015 is the year of dead characters. it
Yeah,
seems
really.
like. Yeah.
And what I find interesting about it is that I don't know exactly how it plays out mechanically, but sort of reminiscent of, have you guys played the video game Rogue Legacy?
Yes.
Yes.
So basically how your kobold ends up, how your kobold shapes up basically will influence future generations.
They inherit whatever you...
Right. And so, as you're several kobolds down the line, your dude's going to be fairly different from how you started off, and it's going to be the same for everybody else, of course. And I think it zooms in on 3 different levels of play. So there's the individual one where you and I and you are all crappy kobolds that can be killed by getting stabbed. And then there's the unit level where maybe the 3 of us gang up more or less, and we are equivalent to the human paladin asshole that's invading our space and is going to stab us. And then from that you have I don't know what they call it, but it's the collective, it's the community, basically. The equivalent of the Warren, if you will.
Right.
And you can zoom in and out of those, and there are playbooks for each and moves for each and different things you can do across the seasons as the game goes on. But it sounds like an interesting, more or less lighthearted way to approach the sort of standard D&D fantasy thing that I'm kind of tired of. And so it sort of gets points for me just on the basis of getting me interested in that once again.
Cool.
The other one that is thematically sort of similar is Legacy Life Among the Ruins. And I apologize for forgetting authors on both of these. But Legacy, I first noticed because I think it came out of a design contest on Something Awful.
Okay.
Yeah. And that one is a post-apocalyptic sort of approach at many of the same themes. And you're looking at your family and your family legacy. And this one looks a lot more political. It's a sort of Game of Thrones meets Fallout almost.
Oh, okay.
And you're looking at your line, you're looking at succession, you're looking at dealing with different communities. And then you have, every once in a while, basically you skip ahead a generation or skip ahead a few seasons at least.
Oh, okay, cool.
And you're able to, again, sort of zoom out and look at things from a more macro level. And that one's a fairly recent Kickstarter, so it'll be a few months before I am able to take a really good look at that. But similar thematic territory, very much looking forward to both.
I don't know anything about either game. I've vaguely heard of. I heard of No Country for Old Kobolds, but I didn't know about those really. So that's cool. It's awesome.
And carrying on with the "Hello, I Love Apocalypse" world theme. Yes,
indeed. So my next game is Pandemic Legacy. Now, this is a board game, just to kind of switch things up a little bit. Pandemic Legacy, so for those of you who don't know, Pandemic is a cooperative board game in which all of the players play responders, members of the CDC in Atlanta who race across the world, curing diseases, or at least suppressing outbreaks of diseases and trying to acquire cures for the disease. And then, but you're basically playing against the board. Very, very good. I would venture to say I've probably played about 100 games of Pandemic in my life.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. Well, that first Christmas, my siblings and I, like, we played like 45 times, I think. Like, we really did. Yeah. And well, so like, we started on like a certain level and we kept building our way up. And if you're not playing on 6 epidemics, GTFO. Like 6 epidemics or GTFO. Like, this 5 epidemic chump bullshit is not even, that's for noobs. No, Pandemic's great. You play against the board. It's awesome. Really, really great cooperative game. Pandemic Legacy, I am led to believe, is a legacy version of Pandemic. So there was a game released about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah, called Risk Legacy. It was just the board game Risk, except what it did was every time you played, and you had about 16 times you could play the game, every time you played the game, you altered the board and the components a little bit. So you might play a game, and then during the course of that game, you might be forced to cross certain things out, or tear up tear up cards from the game. Use a marker to actually mark on the board, like to mark new things. And so when you played it the next time, the game would be different because it
and
has
irrevocably
evolved.
so.
Irrevocably so. Yeah, you can only play the game X number of times. But what's really cool about it, and I have not played Risk Legacy. I'm going to caveat that I've not played it, but I love it conceptually. This idea of and I hate Risk. So, like, let's just throw that out there.
Ditto.
Like,
oh my god.
Ooh, boy, I hate Risk. And so for me to be excited about anything Risk related is, or even interested in anything Risk related is amazing. But just the idea of like this evolving board, like this game that changes with you, just really, really cool idea to me. And so the idea between, I think Pandemic Legacy is going to be more of that. What I've been able to glean is that it will be out in 2015. It will provide basically 12 months of play. So not 12 real world months, but basically 12 games. You'll be able to play it 12 times. You'll be playing sort of a campaign over the course of a year. So you'll play the January game, the February game, the March game. And so you get 12 chances to play it. The board changes, things change. There's a story. Apparently there's going to be like an actual like story attached to it. I think it sounds really awesome, and I'm excited about it because I love Pandemic, and the idea of the legacy thing is pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Pandemic's one of my favorite games. The closest I've had to a bad game was when I was the quarterback dude. That was me until my friends pointed out I was that guy.
That is the thing that happens in Pandemic. Yeah,
I did. Once I curbed that, it's gone. It's a ton of fun, even when you get your ass stomped by bacteria.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's awesome.
And I also hate Risk. And am really intrigued by Risk Legacy, and this finally takes the legacy concept, marries it to something I love. I'm in, and then some.
I think it's going to be a winner. I mean, they've got my money, so Pandemic Legacy, you've got my money.
Yeah, me too.
Matt Leacock, is that his name? Matt Leacock.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And the Risk Legacy dude,
whoever you are. If you're offended by that, do write in.
My next game is Silver and White, and this is by Jackson Tegu. Is that how you...
Probably.
I thought it was Avery McDowell. No, is it not?
It is not.
Oh, okay.
No. So this is a game that it's Jackson Tegu. He's supposed to be putting it like on the slate to finish after Second Skins. If you go to his website, that's what it says. But
that is done. So
that's what I thought. Yeah. But I don't know. This is a game that I know very little about, so this is going to be another quick one, like Explosions, the RPG, where like I love it conceptually, but I know nothing about it. But maybe that's the best thing. That's like the horror movie where you can't see the monster and it's so much scarier, right? So I can't see the mechanics of any of these games, so I just love them because I love like the idea of this game is so amazing. So this is a game that if you listen to like any podcast, I swear to God,
they talk about it.
Every podcast talks about this game.
I know.
And but you can't actually really get any information about it. It's in like private play testing and all
secret.
Of that.
Yeah.
So it's based on like you're all playing teenagers and you have a hand of cards that's used for something, presumably. Every time your characters touch, you exchange cards, and it's supposed to be amazing. That's basically all I know, is that every time I've heard this game mentioned or like seen it mentioned online, it's always like, this game's going to be amazing. But very few details about why. So I'm intrigued just to see what the hell this game even is.
This is a purely hype-fueled
It really is,
selection.
yes.
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I agree with you. Silver and White was my 6th entry. If we were doing 6, Silver and White was number 6. I also don't know anything about it. I know more about it now. Thank you. So, I didn't even know that. I just
like, all of that might be wrong.
I just know a lot of the people who play games or who run games, or I'm sorry, who design games that I like are playtesting it.
Right.
And I trust their opinion. And so when a bunch of people whose opinion you trust says this game is the future, this game is amazing, it's hard not to get sucked into it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That was said about Durance as well.
Was it?
I think so.
Oh, well, sometimes the wisdom of the crowds may not be right.
Jason Morningstar, we're calling you out.
That's right.
Durance is no good.
I cannot back that up. I have not played.
I think
it doesn't matter. We don't play games that we talk shit about. You just talk shit about games. That's what we do here.
That's true. That is it.
Jason Morningstar sucks ball. Sorry, buddy.
It's true. That's
Don't worry.
what I heard.
We're going to be
I don't
kissing
know.
his ass in a second. So it's
Right.
Real quick on Silver and White. So you just mentioned teenagers. Is the setting like a standard modern day thing, or is it malleable, or what?
I'm not entirely sure. You're playing teenagers,
Alrighty.
and like all of the descriptions of it are very like flowery and poetic, but basically say nothing. It's all about like how we focus in on the touches between these characters, and we feel the excitement and the hesitancy that the characters feel as they steal touches. I'm running out of words for touches, but like we zoom in and focus on the characters as they hesitantly touch each other, and like, I don't know, it's real weird, right? But like, everyone says it's great, so I'm just gonna go with that and say that I can't wait to touch people in Silver and White.
This is a great selection for spurring enriching conversation. I
thought so. Yeah,
that was good.
I was hoping that one of you would actually know what the game was about.
Sorry.
No help.
Not going to bail you out on that one.
All right, so my next game is Night Witches, which we will talk about in just a second because it's on somebody else's list. So, and we'll go to Jason.
Well, in that case, Pandemic Legacy was my last game, and so the next game on my list
Spirit of 77.
is Spirit of 77.
Well, you are blind. All right.
I cannot read from just so the listeners know, we're looking at a computer monitor that is not even 4 feet away from me, and it's super zoomed in, and I can't read it. Spirit of 77 is a game about 70s action, grindhouse film, if you're into that, exploitation film, blaxploitation film. Think, oh gosh, I can't think of any names of movies off the top of my head, but in terms of tone, it's supposed to evoke like 70s action, like Chips or Smokey and the Bandit, things like that. And we have actually played this already. I cannot remember the name. His name is David K. On G+, he's David K. I can't remember his last name, but he allowed us to play test it. We had some issues with the playtest, if I'm being honest. There were a few things that in our feedback that we were hoping that he would address. I have since gone back. When it kickstarted, I went back and looked at some of the changes, and I was generally pleased with the direction they're kind of going with the game, I think. And so I don't know if he addressed all the issues that we had identified in it, but I can't help but be in love with this game. For a similar reason to why I'm excited about Worldwide Wrestling, which is I love exploitation film. I love 70s action films. Really, really into it. That is territory that role-playing games have not traditionally covered. I can't think of a role-playing game that has gone for a sort of funky 70s vibe. And so that's kind of exciting to me. The production values on the Kickstarter are really high. The books look great. The art looks terrific. During the playtest, they had just a bunch of like stand-in art from the internet or whatever, but they've gotten a bunch of original art now for it, and it looks magnificent. It's just so exciting. It looks like old movie posters from the 70s. It's really, really, really great. We did do a playtest of it. One of the things it does that we loved about it is the MC or the GM is actually called the DJ, if I'm not mistaken. They're called the DJ, and you have like a playlist of like 70s action, songs or 70s music that you put together beforehand that you play throughout, like during the scenes or to kind of set up a scene. And you also, as the GM or as the DJ, you are supposed to kind of address the characters in the way that the DJ and the Warriors kind of talks about, like they kind of like narrate like the story, but like as if they were going out to a radio audience, and oh, it was so good. It was so fun. Like I was really, really into that. And so I love that. It is also powered by the Apocalypse, which which is a thing. It is officially a thing today. So that's a nice thing about it. Very, very excited. I loved our playtest. I actually, I playtested just the rules. I made up my own little scenario or adventure for it, which was a takeoff of blaxploitation horror flicks. So the sort of classic, the classic example is Blackula, right? And I was kind of going for that. My scenario was called Night of the Negromancer, which I think was just basically the best name ever. Like, I just love that. And I have so much love and affection for these types of movies and for this setting. It was totally irresistible, and it was really, really good. I'll be happy to see like the final changes and things they did with the system. One of the things they did in the system in the playtest, which I don't know if it's changed in the final version, that we were having a little bit of trouble with in the playtest, was the fact that you don't just have a playbook or a skin, which is typical in a PBTA game.
This is what really interested me.
Yeah, you actually like choose two different things. It's essentially like two compendium classes in Dungeon World, and you kind of mash them together and make a new class, right? At the time, it felt like too much work. What'd you feel, Dan? Like, that's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah, I thought so, and I thought that it made for some weird combinations, possibly, as well, that, like, while funny, didn't necessarily fit the tone.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And one of the things that I've seen since that play test is the later play tests of the game were not actually like, here are just the rules, make up your own thing. It was actually like an adventure. It was called, it was a takeoff of the old Love Boat TV show, but with zombies, I think. It was like Zombie Love Boat or something, right? Yeah. And that actually came with, as I recall, it came with pre-done characters already. So you didn't have to have that. I think like it created some consistency. I could be speaking incorrectly there, but I'm pretty sure that's as I recall. So maybe that was like a recognition of that. I'm not sure. It could still be the other way. But here's the thing. We've all been celebrating the release of Johnstone Metzger's Class Warfare, which is a Dungeon World supplement that basically allows you to pick and choose moves to create your playbook. And that's really, really contra to the Apocalypse World sort of ethos. And so...
Well, I mean, there's a bit of it in Apocalypse World. You choose move from another playbook or something.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
It's never been blatant though.
Yeah. So I mean, we've been kind of celebrating that, among the DW players anyway in the Gauntlet have been. So maybe we're being hypocrites by criticizing Spirit of 77 for doing the same thing. I don't know. I think one thing you can do as the GM or the DJ is you can kind of like set some limits, right?
Right.
Like in a lot of the PBTA games, I don't even use all the available playbooks because they're not going to fit the tone that I'm going for, right? That's particularly apt for Monster of the Week, which has some playbooks that they just don't work well together. Like they're awesome like in isolation or with certain playbooks, together, but you have to kind of like limit them. So I think you can kind of fix that problem with Spirit of 77 if it ends up still being a thing. But these guys, their love for the genre and this it radiates like in every little thing they do with this game, and so you can't help but get excited about it. I'm also excited about it because I am a character in the game. I am a named character in the game. I think I'm in one of the adventures, and I think I am Jason Cordova is my wife. I have a wife named Nodi or Noni Cordova. I think it's Nodi Cordova, and we are suburban drug dealers, a la the character from Pulp Fiction, who's played by Eric something. Stoltz, yeah. The Eric Stoltz character in Pulp Fiction. That is the character, the named character that I am, which is very flattering. I can't help but be flattered by that. So it's pretty awesome. So yeah, Spirit of 77.
So real quick, Dan, do you remember any incongruous results that came from the meshing of two playbook halves? I'm trying to envision what went awry.
I'm trying to remember. So I'm trying to remember what the actual halves even were.
There was Kung Fu Fighter.
Right.
Fashion Designer.
Right.
Private Eye. Like, it was stuff like that.
Yeah, but what was the determining factor that made, like, this is the first playbook you get in this
it was, I don't remember. I want to say it was occupation and, like, it was
background or something?
Yeah, like background and occupation or something like that. Yeah.
Right. So you could be like a fashion designer from the Dukes of Hazzard, basically. A good old boy fashion designer and things like that.
Yeah, it had some wonky stuff that happened like that. But I think the DJ can kind of assert himself a little bit and say, you know what, that doesn't really fit with what we're doing. How about you make some, and I don't think that's de-protagonizing anybody. I think that's just...
When I think my biggest problem with it during the playtest was I felt like a lot of the moves didn't do much.
I think they've cleaned a lot of that up, though.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there. There was a lot of it had a lot. It was a problem of excess with the playtest.
Yeah, okay.
There were moves for your two halves. There was moves. The weapons had moves.
Right.
They did not
and
just
then you
tags,
had
they
like your
moves.
special thing.
Yeah,
You
had your one badass thing or whatever
Right.
it's called. It had like a couple of different currencies. It had a Grand Theft Auto style, like the cops are onto me meter thing.
Right,
you
heat
know,
meters.
the heat, yeah. And all of it sounds kind of cool in theory. I'll be curious to see if they cleaned any of that up and kind of reduced some of it because it did have a lot of currencies and a lot of things going on.
And then, but kind of then when it came down to it, the end result of it was a bunch of +1s.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you got more
Yeah.
options with your moves.
Yeah.
It was like I have like 50 moves, but they all just kind of give me bonuses.
Well,
Okay, that's
to be fair, I think when we did that playtest, which is, God, it's been about a year and a half now, I guess.
Yeah.
It's been a while. When we did that playtest, I think we were a little bit on the leading edge of figuring out what is right and what is wrong with Apocalypse World hacks. I mean that seriously because we played a bunch, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I think one of the things that we had decided on as a group, which and I later on saw other people starting to like figure that out too. I'm not saying like we influenced that because I don't know how we would, unless they found our website. And but one of the things I know that we identified was this move is boring. It just does a +1.
right.
Womp
And
womp.
so many of them were like that.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
it was like fishing through the playbooks for like
Yeah.
what's something that actually
God.
gives me more abilities
Right,
instead of just
yeah.
like makes me slightly better at
Tremulous
things
had
I
that
already
issue.
do.
Right?
Yes.
Tremulous is that.
Let me put on my eyeglasses that give me a +1 intelligence.
Right. Yeah. We're calling you out, author of Tremulous. Calling you out. No. So I've never played Tremulous. It might be amazing. I don't know. So
It's not amazing.
so Spirit of 7-7. I'm looking forward to it, despite its potential problems. We'll see.
Great. I think my last game is Night Witches, which Steve mentioned earlier.
Hooray.
Did you want to give the rundown on this or should I?
I'm assuming you probably should. It's you.
Night Witches is a game by Jason Morningstar, and it is a historically accurate role-playing game, like so many of his games are. Like,
Indeed.
he has done extensive research on this. Clearly,
In fairness, like, I think... What am I missing besides Grey Ranks?
Bloody Forks of the Ohio
Mm-hmm.
is a Lady Blackbird hack that takes place during the French and Indian War.
Becker's
wow.
Opera is a historical thing, as I recall.
Yeah, basically, like if you go to his website, if you go to like the Bully Pulpit website and look at the free games,
Okay.
there's just tons of things that are like
Real deep dive
That's very
historical.
cool.
Yeah. He did a hack of Dust Devils that was Frost Devils that was about like the Alaskan Gold Rush. And,
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. We
So-
love Jason Morningstar.
Yes.
but everything he does like on the historical front is always super well researched and he picks really interesting topics.
I think so.
This one is about apparently there is a group of female Soviet bomber pilots during World War II, and they would go out at night and fly bombing missions, like bombing runs over German troops.
Yeah.
And they were called Night Witches, or I believe they were called
Nocthexen.
Nocthexen. Yes. It's another Powered by the Apocalypse game, and
Surprise.
Of course.
I think the interesting thing about this one is that it goes and does kind of two different phases. So you have night phases and day phases, and night phases are when you're actually flying the missions and you're doing dogfights and all of that good World War II plane action.
And maybe dying because it sounds like it's very
Right.
deadly.
Yeah, I get the feeling that it's very, very dangerous missions in general, and he's trying to like really like capture that and make it dangerous in the game as well. And that's the night part, and then during the day part, you're actually dealing with the realities of being a woman soldier in the Soviet army.
Yeah.
In general, it's probably not great to be a soldier in the Soviet army,
No,
but it's
it is
doubly
not.
bad to be a female soldier
Yeah.
and like to be part of a exclusively female unit where the higher ups are sort of setting you up to fail in a lot of cases, and there's just general hostility towards your entire unit.
Yeah,
And
because
so
the male troops view you as a novelty, just something to drum up press, and you're not
Right.
real fighters. And,
Right.
yeah. And especially when you compound all that stuff with the typical Soviet paranoia about what your higher ups are thinking of your performance, and are you being stringent enough in your fervor for the Soviet Union
Right.
and all that kind of crap.
yeah, and there's secret police and all of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
walking around the base. So
Yeah, it sounds really fascinating. And it's Jason Morningstar, so
exactly.
in
I'm sort of sad that I didn't back at the Kickstarter level where Jason Morningstar will pack you a Soviet dinner and actually mail it to your house.
Yes.
with the nice little, looks like they printed out cool labels. And
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah,
I don't even know what's in that package because he's like, it'll feature Cyrillic letters and also Cyrillic letters.
Right, I know. Didn't get that, unfortunately, but I mean, maybe I could find a Russian store around here. Find a Russian grocery store. Do those exist? I don't know.
I don't know.
I know of one in Austin.
So when we play Night Witches, you should hit the Russian grocery store in Austin and
I bought some
buy the things
bread-based
with the
liquor,
backward
and it was
R's on
terrible.
it. And
Bring us some vodka, because that's what Russians do. Russians drink vodka. Isn't that right?
yes.
If you're a Russian and you're offended by what I just said, do write in.
Night Witches. Bam.
My next one is, I think, our next one, Jason.
Yes, it is the last one on my list as well.
Apocalypse World Dark Age.
Ironically, we are going to talk about the next Apocalypse World game after talking about so many powered by the
Right.
Apocalypse World games. Yeah, for sure. Do you want to lead us in on that one?
So I'm probably a little more broad strokes than you. Didn't you? Wait, we just covered this, but I've already forgotten. Did you say you've played or not?
We've played about 5 sessions, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Then, actually, I'm going to leave it to you.
Well, so we played 5 sessions of Apocalypse World Dark Age, and it was a very, very early beta. I have seen some of the new beta materials, and it has changed a lot. It is quite different. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit from ignorance in that regard, because I haven't had a chance to really digest the new playtest material. But I will say it is Vincent Baker's follow-up to his award-winning and much admired game, Apocalypse World. It is his follow-up to that. It's called Apocalypse World Dark Age. The original Apocalypse World was about people in a post-apocalyptic setting scrabbling and fighting over limited resources that are inherent in a post-apocalyptic setting.
Pretty much about what it sounds like.
Yeah, Apocalypse World Dark Age, on the other hand, is a fantasy game about people scrabbling for limited resources such as land and serfs and peasants and things like that. It is supposed to have a more Game of Thrones-esque feel as opposed to a Dungeons and Dragons adventuring party feel. It is fantasy. It has lords and ladies and warriors, and I can't remember what the name of the wizards are. It was a really cool thing. I can't remember the name of it.
Wicker something.
Wickerwise.
Wickerwise,
The Wickerwise.
yeah.
Yeah. But it is not a traditional D&D style fantasy setup. It is very much more in the Game of Thrones political leverage and machinations. Yes. And so that was pretty cool. We got to play about 5 sessions of it. One of the things I loved about it is he's actually taking the ideas behind Apocalypse World and he's evolving them. So this is not just a straight translation of Apocalypse World engine. He's adding and fiddling with and trying out lots of new things and trying to play with the system, to play with tags, just to do different things with it. And so it does a couple of really cool things that
So would you say it's powered by the apocalypse?
It kind of is. It's powered by the apocalypse, but it is its own thing. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for that observation. It is. It does a lot of neat things along. It's almost kind of some stuff that like video games have been doing for a while. You have to manage your lands. You have resources that come from the lands. You have a certain number of like followers and peasants and subjects who are yours. That you have to manage, and they give you things, but they also cause you problems.
You can call upon their aid if you go to battle and that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, you can like conscript. I think if you're a lord, you can like conscript men into battle and that sort of thing. It really kind of, he's taking this idea of, so in Apocalypse World, there was the playbook it was the biker playbook, the one that had the gang.
The chopper.
The chopper that had the gang and so you could use that gang to like do, to like give you extra moves and to do different things with it, right? Yeah. He's taking that idea and really blowing it up a lot. Like this idea of there are characters who have lots of like people to cope with and like things to deal with, right? And so that's pretty exciting. And like I said, he's changed the rules a lot in the playtest. He's mixing it up a lot, and I'm sure Meg is helping him out too. That's his wife. I have not digested the current playtest, but what I saw of it, there's a lot of really cool things going on in there. And a shout out to Vincent Baker. Vincent Baker is very, very good at taking things we all know, like let's say Mad Max post-apocalyptic setting, right? And kind of putting a real like delicious and scrumptious like new spin on it, right? Like just in the language he uses and the things like the names he gives to things. Like the wizard is not called the wizard, he's called the Wickerwise, right? Like that's kind of cool. The mighty like heroic dragon slaying warrior is called the troll killer or whatever, that kind of thing. Very, very evocative, just like Apocalypse World and all the PBTA games, the good ones anyway. The language that's used in the moves means something, right? Like it has meaning. Like if the move is called seize by force, like that has meaning, right? Like just that phrase, seize by
Instead
force.
of attack.
Exactly, right. Yeah, so it means something. And he's very, very good at that. The things that are named have meaning and they are triggers for how you're supposed to play it in the fiction. And there's a lot of that in Apocalypse World Dark Age. And so I'm pretty pumped about it. Did you have some thoughts on it?
So my thoughts are much more broad strokes because I have not played. I just today got the most recent playtest document.
Okay.
Before that, it was mostly just people talking about it on
Sure.
threads. But I'm a huge fan of the Game of Thrones flavor of fantasy. In addition to being Dresden out, I am dungeoned and dragoned out, and really just love the shit out of some low dark fantasy, low magic dark fantasy.
Sure, yeah. And this is very low magic.
Oh, hooray! You're speaking my language.
Super, super low magic.
And in addition to that, Apocalypse World is just it was written for me, basically. Vincent Baker doesn't know me. I don't know how he did it, but it was written for me.
No, that was in the foreword. It said, this is for Steve Maines.
Oh man, I wish I didn't skip past those bits.
Steve Maines of Houston, Texas.
How did he know I was going to move here?
It was the only part of the book I understood.
So I'm very much looking forward to it. And I was looking at, I'm sort of scrolling through things I didn't necessarily understand. So did the playtest version you guys played have the rights, all that stuff? Because I was looking at a bunch of sheets that are like land rights or...
Yes, it did.
It did.
Yes.
What?
And well, so all of those are like things that you are entitled to that you don't have yet in a lot of cases.
Right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's plot hooks.
Okay.
Or things that you have responsibilities to and all that, like your holdings.
Right.
Is that getting into the holdings as well?
I believe so.
We might mix some things up, but that's basically, thematically, you're on the right track.
Yeah. And so like you have your holdings, which are all of the things that like you actually do have now. And so those are the things that like you can draw resources from or like kind of go into debt to.
Okay.
One of the playbooks is called, oh god, I don't remember the name of it, but it's the one that Rob, rest in peace, played, where you're like an exiled lord, right? Like you're an exiled lord who has a claim over lots of these different things,
that's very cool.
but you're penniless currently,
Yeah.
right? And so, but there's also like you may have allies in the kingdom, or that you can call upon, and that kind of thing. People who are still loyal to you or whatever. Very, very, very evocative. Good stuff. Well, that was our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or concerns or anything you'd like to take issue with, do write in to gauntletpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Google+. Just go to the community section of Google+ and search for The Gauntlet. We pop right up. And we are also on Meetup. So if you're in the Houston area and you'd like to join us for a game, we run lots and lots of games. We are like the convention that never ends. There's always a table, always something new to play. You may go to Meetup and search for role-playing games in the Houston area. We are also the first thing that pops up there when you search for role-playing games in Houston. So thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Steve.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.